This show is sponsored by Infinite Zeal Syndicate. You can follow him on Twitter @_Infinite Zeal. He is a great liberty-minded fella that just wants to share the message of liberty and also has fantastic merch like this hat I'm wearing right now. You see me wear it on every show. He's a great gentleman, and I highly suggest you give him a follow because he's one of the good ones, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the BudsnReality Show, the #1 Liberty pod in the Detroit area. I am Sean Collins, the guy with a lot to say, and we have a guest this week from the land down under. Sorry, I had to do it. Kate Fantinel, Lady Liberty, how you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited because I am currently in the United States of America. I'm so excited to be here, the home of the brave and the land of the free. We're not that down under, unfortunately, but I'm trying to bring liberty to Australia, and I'm learning it from you guys firsthand.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And I wish we could be the land of the free and home of the brave. We do not live up to that expectation anymore here, unfortunately.
I'm a bit disappointed. I've been a little bit. You've still got that spirit. You've got your constitution. We don't have any rights in Australia. We can't even own guns, which is what I'm passionate about. So you're doing it better than us, at least.
We are trying, but we have to keep it this way. So like I tell people all the time, like this is the best goddamn country in the entire world. There's no mistake in that. Okay. But we have to make sure we keep it that way. And the way that things are going with our federal government, we're not leaning that way at all. It's very sad. But what makes it even worse is there's really been no clapback from the people, which is even more terrifying than the tyranny itself, is that the people are just laying down and dealing with it. I mean, if you go into American history, we became a country, over a 2% tax over tea. And now we're like literally paying 40+% of our money to the government. That's definitely not for tea. And everybody just sits back and some complain online and whatever like that. But like, let's get into Australia because, for the most part, before COVID happened, people like me, because I didn't really look outside of the United States so much. So I just saw like the pictures that came in from the outside. And to me, Australia was, a lot of kick-ass waves for surfing and, some giant snakes that could totally eat a human and some crocodiles and sharks and shit like that. But it was all like, a big like happy place, like Crocodile Hunter, for crying out loud. Like I grew up watching Crocodile Hunter, and it was always like Australia was this great place with a lot of animals. And then COVID came and it was like, holy shit, what are they doing there?
Well, this is what happens when you give up your guns. So we handed back most of our guns in 1996 after a terrible incident in Port Arthur, Tassie, where there was a mass murder. And the government at the time used that to disarm the population. They took away most of our guns. We can't have semi-autos there at all, for example. It's very restricted. In my state of Western Australia, they've currently capped the number of firearms you can own. You can only own up to 5 guns now in Western Australia. Pistols are almost impossible to own across the nation. And for me, that's what made me a libertarian, was because guns to me are a symbol of freedom. You need them to fight against a tyrannical government. And as you saw during COVID, we didn't have that option for us. So they made quarantine camps. Yes, that's true. They did put a lot of us in quarantine camps. They closed the borders. In my state, for 2.5 years, you couldn't travel freely. You had to have 3 injections to be considered vaccinated at one stage. It was just the boot of the state was on our neck, and it still is in Australia. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here, where people actually understand liberty, because you guys, like you said, you fought against the British. We're still part of the monarchy. You guys have fled the chains of the monarchy, but they're still have control over us. So we're not a nation of free peoples. We do have that easy go and how you go and make culture, but that doesn't pay well when you've got a tyrannical government. So that's why we're in the position we are in today down under.
Now you said it was 1996 where that big shooting happened and they kind of changed the game on gun laws. Now, what was it like before that? Like before they came up with these gun laws where they disarmed the people? And then also, how did they go about disarming citizens after that?
Well, pistols have always legally been required to be registered in Australia, so they knew who had pistols at the time and took them away. In terms of other laws, there was a loose registration system, and as I've said, registration always leads to confiscation, so they got people under that opt-in registration system. And the rest of it was just a fear campaign, like, we will come and take your guns because you are not a trusted person anymore because of the actions of one madman that was known to police, by the way. I know it's the age-old classic saying, but he was known to police. The incident still happened. And then the rest of us got tarred with this brush. I was old enough at the time to see my father have to turn in heritage firearms and family heirlooms because they were semi-automatic, for example. And since then, it's just been a steady decline into more tyranny, more control, more loopholes, more things to do. At the moment, they're actually looking at your social media presence to see if you're eligible for a license. So if you have any views, attitudes, or opinions that are against the government, then you can't own a firearm because you're considered untrustworthy. So it's kind of reverse in Australia. You are born with the right to own firearms in America. In Australia, we have to prove that we are a peaceful person, that we are even allowed to own a firearm. So it's kind of the other way around.
So pretty much you're saying that they're using social credit scores against citizens of Australia, which are ESGs. You know, Carol Roth talked about that in her book, You Will Own Nothing. If you haven't read that, I would highly recommend that. I actually had her on my show right after she dropped that book to talk about it. And wow, you know, they're doing that. You know, the social credit score thing kind of started in China. That's where it really kind of, you know, was bred and came to fruition. But I had no idea they were doing stuff like that in Australia. But it's not so surprising considering the circumstances, what's going on over there. Now, you say that they're really hardcore against handguns. Well, what about rifles?
So they're hardcore against handguns because they're more easy to conceal. So one of the lines that the politicians trot out in Australia is like, you could hide one in your glove box. I was in Dallas, Texas last week, and a man literally had one in his glove box for self-defense reasons. Now, we don't have the legal, practical right to self-defense in Australia. We are not even allowed to carry pepper spray or mace. We are told that we just have to fight for ourselves or call the police. So we can't use firearms to defend ourselves. We can't use pepper spray. We can't use mace. We are a nation of victims. The government has used the fear propaganda, the mass media to come out and say that if you're in trouble, you are to rely on the state to save you, not yourself, because you can't be trusted. That's the culture. Australia is basically a police state, right? So any problems at all, don't deal with it yourself, call the police. And as we know, when seconds count, police are minutes away.
And that's absolutely absurd to me for many reasons, but like, you're a woman, okay? Obviously, we're not going to use pronouns or anything like that, but you are a lady, and you have to walk those streets unprotected with. There's so many creepers out in this world, okay? Like, you know, it's one of those things where, like, I feel like every woman should be carrying a firearm of some sort to protect themselves from these creeps that are out there, especially somebody who's pretty or good looking or whatever you want to call it. I mean, all women should do that. I shouldn't say that like that. Wow. Rewind. All women should be carrying guns, you know, but you know, it's one of those things where, like, these clowns can just come out of the woodwork and attack you at any given moment. And you're just supposed to be like, ... 911 or whatever it is. And I'll show you, hey, some guy's trying to get me right now. I need you to be here in 30 seconds or less.
Well, it's worse than that because we don't even have the right to defend ourselves in our own homes. We don't have castle doctrine. We don't have stand your ground. If someone is coming into my house to rape me, I am not legally allowed to get my pistol, of which I'm a trained, proficient pistol shooter. I'm not allowed to touch it. I have to keep my gun and my magazine and ammunition stored separately in a safe. So if an intruder is coming into my home, my castle, it's only some states allow equal force. But as you know, if a big tall man's coming to attack me, then my punch is not going to equal his punch, but my gun, the equalizer, I'm not legally allowed to touch in those situations. So that's what I mean by a nation of victims, even within our own homes, on our own property, in our own castles. We do not have any legal right to defend ourselves.
Wow. Like, I don't even know what to say to that. So, you know, I happen to live just outside of Detroit, right? And things do happen out here, you know, and that's unfortunate, but at least I'm protected by the law. If somebody breaks into my home and I blow his fucking head off, like, I'm going to be all right. They're going to arrest me and take me in for questioning, but most likely I'm going to be okay because they were in my home unwelcome. That is insanity.
With murder. I would be charged with murder and I would be the one in trouble. Even if I could prove I was defending myself, I would be the one in front of a judge charged with murder and using a firearm illegally.
So have you been like checking out the housing market while you're here in the States too? Because you might need to get the hell out of there.
I feel like I'm a political refugee fleeing Australia. If you can create a new visa system for that, I don't want to flood the system like all the illegal immigrants coming across from Mexico, but I would love to seek refuge in your country just to have those rights and have a government accept that, yes, individuals are born with God-given rights. In Australia, we don't have any. It's all at the will of the state.
So then riddle me this. What if somebody broke into your house and had a weapon on them? You're still not allowed to do what you need to do at that point? Or are you allowed at that point that they have a weapon to defend yourself?
No, because in Australia, when you apply to own a firearm, you have to prove genuine reason, and self-defense is explicitly stated as not a genuine reason for using a firearm. So if you're proven to use a firearm for a reason that you haven't applied for under your license, like target shooting or hunting, if you took your hunting rifle out for target practice, you could get charged for using that firearm for the purposes of which it wasn't granted. That's how crazy it is. When everyone knows you need to sight in your rifle at a range before you go hunting, that's the right thing to do. If you haven't applied for target shooting as part of your license process and you get caught sighting in your hunting rifle at a range, they can take your gun.
Wow. Like that's about as dystopian as it gets. Like we've been talking, you know, I just did a show with Mike Decentralized. I don't know if you see him on X at all. That's my homeboy, and I'm actually working on some really cool shit with him right now. But you know, the dystopians have taken over. There's no doubt about that. And it's not just here in the United States. You know, we think this is dystopian here, but you talk about things that are going on in Australia right now that are like, wow, you know, and there's no uprisings there. Nobody's really standing up to this stuff.
The last uprising we had was the Eureka Stockade, when the miners at the time rioted over the government trying to tax the gold that they'd mined out of the ground. That was in the 1800s in Victoria, Ballarat. Since then, we've become a nation of submissive citizens. We've lost that Anzac fighting spirit. The Anzacs are the one who went to war for Great Britain during World War I, where we wanted to prove ourselves on the national stage. Since then, I'm sad to report that there is not much of a fighting spirit left within the Australian people. We have a culture of turning to the state to save us. If ever there's a problem in Australia, we look to the government to be our savior rather than turning to our communities, our families, or ourselves. So it's hard to get the message of liberty, individual liberty, and what can you do to make yourself better and your community better when everyone's passing the buck onto the state.
Well, and that, you know what, that's what's kind of happening here in the United States right now. So there's a lot of us who are pissed off, you know, and who are completely done with this nonsense, like myself, you know, and there's plenty of other people like me. But then there's others who are like, well, you know, we're going to enforce our fascism on the other side to get our way. And then the other side does the same exact thing, you know, and it's become a complete fascist state. Like America is fascist as it comes. You know, Republicans, Democrats, they're two sides of the same coin at this point, you know, and there's a couple out there who are really, you know, kind of the outsiders in those groups. Like we have our Thomas Masseys, we have our Rand Pauls, we have our Justin Amashas and people like that. But there's not enough of them, you know. Most of them are like, okay, well, we'll give you whatever you want as long as you vote for our side, right? And it's the same across the board. The fact that there's no uprising in Australia after what you guys are going through, and the fact that there's no uprising here in the United States after what we've been through with the COVID tyranny. Look what they're doing in Germany per se, and with the farmers and stuff like that. They were trying to put all these taxes and regulations on the farmers, and they went out and they took their tractors and their farm equipment and they started slinging literal shit on the porch steps of these politicians and their buildings and state buildings. They're slinging shit. They're holding up traffic with their tractors and stuff like that, you know. And then you had in Paris just last summer, the people of Paris burned down a BlackRock building. That gives me goosebumps talking about that, because like, look, I don't condone rioting by all means. Like, I think that's a really fucked up way to go. But if you're burning down BlackRock and slinging shit on the steps of the state, we might be able to just be friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not necessarily against that. You know, when BlackRock is literally one of the entities that are the reason for the evil in the whole world. It's not even just per country. You know, you look at the WEF, the WEF, whatever you want to call it. The CEO of BlackRock is the whole brains behind that operation. People don't even see it. They're like, oh, well, it's Klaus Schwab and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, Klaus Schwab's retiring and it's not a big deal or whatever. He's getting out of the game. I wish he would just die, to be quite honest with you. I know that's pretty harsh to say, but like, are you kidding me? Anybody who wants to put chips in our brains and keep us tracked and have us eating bugs and you know, taking away, you know, what civilization once was. Oh no, if you happen to pass away, so be it. I'm all for that. Good riddance. We'll see you later. But like, Klaus wasn't the whole brains behind that. It was BlackRock, you know, and that's, you know, the central banks run everything in the entire world. It's not just the United States. Now, what is the central bank in Australia? Are they IMF World Bank?
So there is a push at the moment to move towards a digital currency, CBDC. We have just introduced a digital ID. So the government has enforced, it's not mandatory, they say, but you need a digital ID to lodge a tax return, for example, which every Australian who earns an income has to legally do. So they're forcing us onto this digital ID. They're planning a CBDC as we speak. They've got misinformation, disinformation bill that's also passed the parliament, meaning the government is the arbiter of truth. It's like 1984. I can't even believe I'm saying this to you, but that is the situation in Australia. We have a social credit system for guns. We're moving towards digital currency, digital ID. Government controls what is truth and what's not. That's why I'm trying to flee to your country.
Now, what is it like for, you know, obviously the political landscape is socialist / fascist communist over there, whatever you want to call it. It's probably all the above, the way you're making it sound. But what are there actual libertarians in Australia? Is there a libertarian party and are they relevant?
Yeah, so just so you understand, we have Labor and Liberal Party. Labor is like your Democrats and Liberal is your Republican Party, but they're both as bad as each other. They're both high tax, controlling. Liberals were in charge during COVID and you still saw the tyranny, the COVID camps, the taxes put on people. There is a Libertarian Party. I worked for the first senator ever elected for the Libertarian Party in Australia, Senator David Leyonhjelm. He's like your Ron Paul. So he was fantastic. But since then, we've seen division within the party there. We've seen it taken over by right-wingers in New South Wales, left-wingers in Victoria, which are two of the states where there are two libertarian politicians. So it seems to be the same across the divide. I was at the convention in DC and I saw all the infighting and the power plays and everything that played out. And I like your shirt, by the way, Noda 24. God, that was such a event, people running around saying we might not even have a candidate for the election. I thought that's actually pretty based. No one. Let's vote no one. Because sometimes the lesser evil is no one.
Make sure to check out our latest sponsor, Libertarian Goth. She happens to be a fantastic individual who loves liberty and has a clothing apparel store, which has amazing things like this. Noda 24. We're screwed no matter what. It's absolutely hilarious and very bold at the same time. And oh, by the way, she's the only liberty-minded apparel company who focuses on the metal, goth, emo, and punk communities with style. It's great. Please check her out on X at Libertarian Goth, or you can get at her on her website for her merch, LibertarianGoth.com. Use promo code BudsnReality to get yourself 10% off. Deals are awesome. Let's get to the show. I was not opposed to that idea at all. And I'm going to sound like an asshole when I say that, but I am no longer affiliated with the Libertarian Party. Actually, I've left. I'm working on different things right now, more focused on local stuff, you know, which is where it's at. Like, you know, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but here in the States, you can protect yourself locally, through nullification. And that's kind of something I've been working on, you know, with some libertarians still. Like, I'm not against libertarians at all. And I will push and help all the candidates that I believe in. Absolutely no problem. I welcome them on my show. I would gladly give them a platform. But as far as party politics goes, I'm not interested anymore. And you probably understand after you saw that last convention. And you probably got to see Michigan for what it really was. Like, did you see the Michigan nonsense while you were there?
I saw a lot of nonsense. To me, it was crazy because in Australia, with our conventions, if you're a paid member for more than 6 months, you can show up and vote. Here, there was arguments about who should be seated as a delegate, who has the right to even vote, which took up 1.5 days. Herding libertarians, trying to get them to agree when we're all individualists and we don't want to be told what to do. I saw a lot of that going on. But for me, I'm the same. I'm not a member of the party in Australia anymore. I'm doing my own thing for liberty on my own outside of party politics, because it just gets to the point where you're fighting against people that are meant to be on your side. And it gets exhausting when they're your enemy. It's that classic meme, but it's sad to see that it's the same here as well, because libertarian, we have all the answers to all the world's problems, right? If we had a libertarian utopia tomorrow, how much happier, freer, more money would we have? More guns we could have, more cannabis we could have. But we can't get to that point when we're divided internally. And it was a bit disappointing to come to the United States and see what happened at the convention. And I can't see a pathway to liberty being restored in America when the party itself, which is meant to be the vehicle politically, is so divided.
Well, a lot of that has to do with them labeling themselves, right? And that goes for like everything across the board, though. Like, as soon as you put labels on yourself, you create division. So right now, here in the United States, and especially here in Michigan within the Libertarian Party, you have your right libertarians and your left libertarians, right? Why does it matter? If you're a libertarian, you're a libertarian. There shouldn't be a right, there shouldn't be a left, there shouldn't be a big L or small L or whatever they're trying to do with this stuff. Like, until we take labels off ourselves, nothing's getting better. And that goes for the, you know, the same for like, you know, racism and, you know, just pretty much anything that's going to divide the people. You start labeling yourselves as just an Australian or just an American or just a person. You know what I mean? Like, we all cut ourselves open. We're all going to bleed out red, right? But like, the idea of liberty, there's no gray area in liberty, right? It's very black and white. It's cut and dry. You're either for liberty or you're for authoritarianism. There's no in between. There literally is not an in between. And I see, you know, just being somebody who was involved with the party on a pretty big basis, you know, I have some people who are involved. I was involved, you know, and the one thing I saw that I couldn't stand was the divide by people who shared the same values. Like, you're arguing with people you agree with, but because there might be a little something here or a little something there that they disagree on, well, then the world's ending and that's over. Or it's either my way or the highway. We saw it here in Michigan. The Libertarian Party in Michigan is, sorry guys, I love you so much, but like, I'm not too sure it's going to survive. The actual state party itself, the way things are going, I don't think it's going to make it.
Well, I ran for the Senate at the last Australian federal election for Western Australia, and I ran on a pro-gun campaign. I'm the first Australian political candidate. I put posters of myself shooting a .308 Lee Enfield with my little pistol as well. And the party, it caused division among the party because guns in Australia is a very sensitive topic because we've had since 96 years of brainwashing from the media that Australian gun laws are the best in the world. They keep us safe, repeated every day since 96. So people have been lulled into a false sense of security. At the moment, we have mass stabbings occurring in Australia. Sydney, the biggest city in the world, we had a religious leader stabbed in front of his congregation.
I saw that. Holy shit.
Yes.
Wow.
And our e-safety commissioner wanted Elon Musk to take that footage down from the internet, not just in Australia, but for the whole world. There was a court case where our e-safety commissioner, one of the bureaucratic employees of the government, took Elon Musk to court to try and censor that footage from the entire internet, wipe it off the face of the internet to control the information that's being put out there. So we still have terrible incidents occurring, not with guns, but it's not because of our gun laws. It's because we have a nation of people broken from what they did to us during the pandemic. We had Melbourne was the second most locked down city in the world behind one of the cities in China. My state, Western Australia, the border was closed for 2.5 years. I couldn't travel within my own country for 2.5 years. This is what happens when you give too much power to the government, which is why I respect your Second Amendment so much, because that was put in there for the very reason to protect the people from a tyrannical government. We have a tyrannical government in Australia and there's nothing we can do about it because all our rights are taken away. We have none at all.
You need some farmers to start slinging shit then.
We need a revolution, my friend.
And I'm all like, it's one of those things where we almost have to be careful what we say when it comes to
peaceful revolution.
It's one of those things like peaceful revolution, peaceful uprising, blah, blah, blah. You know what it is at the end of the day. You know how I feel on this show if you're listening to it. That's for damn sure. But there needs to come a point where not only people here in the United States, but people in the Australia, need to get together with their local police, their local sheriff, and say, hey, we're not doing this shit anymore. We're done. We're not going to comply to what you're saying or what you're doing or what you're even trying to do. We're not doing this. We're done. There's nothing you can do about it, and come and get us. Because, and it's terrifying. I know that it seems to be like, well, they're going to come get us with all their guns and stuff like that. Live free or die. Like, it's one of those things, man. Like, it's so cliche, but like, do we want to be slaves for the rest of our lives? Do we want to be owned by the elite? Because it's not just about government. The government doesn't run shit. Here in the United States, anyways, I can't speak for Australia, but I can probably take a pretty good guess it's somewhat the same. The pecking order goes, the central banks, they're way up here. They're the ones who control all of it. Everything that you see is controlled by the central bank. Then you have your corporations, big pharma, oil, what else is there in the world? I mean, the military industrial complex, defense contractors, stuff like that. They're second in the pecking order. They're getting their way. Then it comes governments, and they're the goons because they're the ones who make the laws. But they're going to make the laws that the people who are in the upper tiers are telling them. This is how it goes in the United States. This is why we're always at war. This is why we're always printing money. This is why there's always a new law or bill or something put on the table to restrict the rights of citizens. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can't even explain it, better than that. That's what it is. Like what now, let me ask you this. After we've gone through all that, how much is Australia involved in war?
I was just about to say, we follow whatever America does. If you want to send us to war, we will follow you. We are your whipping boys. We follow whatever America does in terms of war. So that's another thing that I've come here to plead. Please stop these endless wars. Please stop sending money and our people that we don't have enough of to fight for freedoms in other nations when we don't even have it ourselves. But Australians, we just do whatever America tells us to do, and it's devastating. That's one thing I do like about Chase Oliver, your presidential candidate, is that he is solid on the anti-war stuff. Was an anti-war activist. I really respect what he says, and I want that message to be heard back home in Australia, because we are just following the lead of America. You guys, we turn to America as the beacon of hope and leadership. You're still the empire of the world, but what you're doing to hold that power, I don't know how much longer it's going to be that way. And then when you fall, Australia will fall.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. So like the fall of Rome, one of the biggest empires ever in the history of empires. It's biblical. That Rome is in the Bible. They talk about it. Rome collapsed because of endless wars, the debasement of dollar, and
Unhappy citizens.
yes. And it's eerily familiar. We're seeing it now, and we're right there. Like the United States is on the brink of collapse, financial collapse. And when the financial collapse happens, the world is going to feel it. And there's already other countries like China and Russia and Mexico, Brazil, India. They started the BRIC system, which is a pretty much a CBDC, but that it will be backed by gold. Hello, people. It's backed by gold. We've been talking precious metals on my show for well over a year now. And I'm getting goosebumps again talking about it. Like, it's only a matter of time before the collapse happens. And when countries are talking about leaving the petrodollar, which is, the oil, it's over. It's over for the United States. We will be Venezuela. We will be Argentina before Milei got there. We will be those countries. And now, where's Australia financially? Like, what's their debt like? And what's their spending like? And do they print money like the United States does?
Yes, we do. So we're approaching $1 trillion debt, which for a country our size of GDP, the size of our GDP is smaller than Texas. We're not even though we're a mineral rich nation, uranium, we're the second highest supplier in the world, but we don't have nuclear power because heaven forbid we use our own resources to power the people cheaply and efficiently. So we are on the same trajectory as the United States in terms of collapse. They printed millions of dollars out of thin air during COVID to pay for the so-called COVID bills. And it's not looking good down under either. And I think we're feeling it. Like Sydney the other day is the second most expensive place in the world to live. And it's $20 for a pint of beer.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, we have the second highest alcohol tax in the world and the first highest tobacco tax in the world. Yeah. That's why I'm drinking these $2 beers here. We cannot get beers for under $10 at home. So I'm really enjoying your alcohol prices.
That can be wow. $20 beers. Are you drinking a Yingling?
Yes.
Yingling is America's oldest brewed beer,
I
right?
know, that's why I wanted to try it. They've got the rest. Right.
Yeah, that's the first beer ever brewed in the United States from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, yes.
Love it.
I happen to be a big spirits guy. I worked in the bar industry for almost 20 years, so I'm kind of, hip to what's going on in that stuff.
I'm a big whiskey drinker. I'm half Irish, half Italian, so I like my whiskey and wine.
Do we just become best friends?
I think so.
I'm a McWop. I call myself a McWop
Oh,
because we are Irish Italian. Oh yeah,
we're the same.
we are the same. That's hilarious. Too funny.
The other thing about Australia, vapes are illegal. You can't get a vape, nicotine vape or cannabis vape without a prescription in Australia. You can buy cigarettes from the servo without any issues, but if you want to buy a vape, they're banned in Australia unless you have a doctor's prescription.
You have weed in Australia. Like, obviously there's weed everywhere, but like, is it legal? Is it recreational? Is it medical? Like, what's the weed situation over there?
So at the moment, cannabis is only legal for medicinal reasons. So you have to go to a doctor, prove why you need it, then you get a script, and it can only be posted to you. There's no storefronts, shop fronts. You can't buy it for recreational purposes. It's all through the pharmaceutical industrial complex. We don't have recreational use in Australia.
Wow, that's interesting. I hope you have your card at least.
I get that paperwork.
Like here in the States, especially in Michigan, so it's illegal federally here. Cannabis is illegal federally. It's still a federal thing. But certain states have jumped on board with cannabis. Mine happens to be one of them in Michigan. So back in 2008, they went medical. And then for the next 10 years, it was medical only. It was, you could either be a patient or a caregiver. Those were the two cards you could get at the time. And obviously you wanted to be a caregiver because you could grow more plants, you know, because patients can only grow 12 plants here.
Well, you can't grow any of your own plants. No.
You better just come to the United
I
States.
know.
I
See,
mean,
I'm fleeing. I need a political refugee visa. I'm fleeing tyranny. Help me.
my God, wow. The thing is, here in Michigan, like it was the medical for 10 years. 2018 came, which happened to be the year that Big Gretch, I don't know if you ever heard of our governor, Gretchen Hitler, I mean Whitmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of the biggest tyrants of all. But anyhow, when the same year she got elected as governor for the first term, we went full rec here in Michigan, which was great. I mean, it opened avenues for businesses, it created jobs, it created tax revenue, which we definitely needed, even though I'm very much against taxes. But if you're one of those people who are, you know, for taxes and all that, it brought money into the state. Okay. The one thing was, after it went rec, it was cool to be recreational everywhere except in Detroit. So Detroit didn't get recreational licenses until 2 years ago.
Okay.
After it was deemed recreational per state in 2018. But a lot of people say, well, Detroit nullified that and they said they didn't want that type of stuff in their neighborhoods. I find that extremely hard to believe because that was number one, that came from news media. But number two, a city that was so desperate for tax revenue wasn't giving their pot shops licensing for recreational. Are you kidding me? Like, it's not a big secret. Like, Detroit is in, you know, as much as we're building and things have gotten so much better, you know, like for instance, the neighborhood I live in back in the 80s, in the early 90s, this was not a safe neighborhood at all. You know, I don't live technically in Detroit. I'm just outside Detroit. The infamous 8 Mile that everybody knows about is just 2 miles down the road from me, straight up, not even. But they denied them their licensing. And I happened to go to a pot shop in Detroit that's right down the road off 8 Mile. And when they did get the rec licenses going for Detroit, my shop did not get chosen for rec because they didn't rub enough elbows with the city council. And that's what it all boils down to, is who you know. You know, so all the people that were like, hey, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge with the city council and the mayor and all that stuff. They got their licensing. My people did not, because most of them are anarchists like I am. This show's been brought to you by Anarchy Wear. They are a great organization who sells clothing, banners like what's behind me, hats, all kinds of stuff. And they're absolutely amazing. Not only do they put out awesome content, they also make awesome things like this. And if you're a Spooner fan, you have this. Let me stand up. I didn't sign shit. Lysander Spooner. If you're a Spooner fan, you'll totally understand. If you're not a Spooner fan, get in my DMs and I'll let you know, because he's one of the greatest to ever do it. This flag behind me, enemy of the state. Man, that's Murray Rothbard, the greatest to ever do it. I'm a Rothbardian. He is my favorite economist. He is my favorite anarchist, libertarian, whatever you want to call him. Fantastic material that he's put out. I highly recommend you read his books, but Anarchy Wear has everything from bold to cute and modest. You know what I mean? So like, check them out at Anarchy Wear on X, aka Twitter, at anarchywear.ca on anything meta, being Facebook and or Instagram. They're awesome. I love those guys. They're doing great things, and I highly recommend you follow them and get some goods from them, man. I love everything I have from these guys, and they're amazing. And let me throw this in for you. If you use promo code BudsnReality, Buds, letter N, reality. I know you know how to spell. If you're watching this show, you're pretty smart. I know you are. Anyways, get at them, get yourself some gear. And if you use the promo code BudsnReality, you will get yourself 15% off. Who doesn't like a deal? So get at them, check them out. They are great, awesome people. Thank you for the sponsor, and let's get on with the show.
Well, I see cannabis use the same way I see vaccine mandates. It's a bodily autonomy issue. So you can't be pro-cannabis and pro-vaccine mandates, because, you know, you can't tell other people what to do with their bodies. So for me, just let me decide what I want to do. If I'm not hurting anyone else, it's no one else's business. That's where I draw the line. And in Australia, we don't get it. The government wants to control what we do with our bodies, what we do with our money, to the point where we're taxed at an effective rate of 60% of our money goes to the government. That's why we're all poor. We can't afford charity anymore because all our money is taken by the government. So we've lost that sense of looking after each other because we can't afford to.
Right.
So it's changed the culture, and Australian government has been very effective in changing the Australian culture of, you know, lending a hand, helping out a mate. We physically can't anymore because we're taxed to the eyeballs and we don't have freedom of choice. So everyone's walking around still traumatized by what they did to us during COVID. I mean, locking us in our homes, telling us to have 3 injections to be vaccinated, saying we can't travel, putting a 5-kilometer radius on where we could go, 1 hour a day of sunlight. They've beaten us into submission. So these kind of conversations about cannabis and other things, like, we're still traumatized by what the government did to us, and we had no way of standing up to them because we didn't have our guns. But you try telling an Australian that, and they'll say, no, the government kept us safe. They were doing the right thing with the information at the time. No, they were keeping themselves safe and their political mates safe. But we're not safe, and we're a nation of broken people who don't understand liberty because we've never tasted the taste of liberty, because we don't have a constitution that protects individual rights. If you say individual rights to Australians, they won't even know what you're talking about, because we're all collectivized into thinking we need to work towards the greater good. And this is the point that you made about us being a fascist nation. We are a fascist nation. We are under the boot of the state, and everyone's too terrified or worried about the next paycheck and paying the bills to even think about, hang on a second, it's the government that have caused all these problems. They're the ones who we need to hold to account. Our election systems are a joke. They've made it almost impossible for minor parties to get elected, to the point where there's no point voting anymore because it's the big two. They're both as bad as each other. And then we're left with less freedoms every election cycle. So I look to you guys and I think, what's going to happen this year with your big elections? And then I see you put up a ticket of Chase Oliver and Mike to Matt for the Libertarian Party, and I'm thinking, Is that where we're at now with the libertarian movement? We had Javier Milei in Argentina smashing it, you know, tearing down the state with the chainsaw. What are the Americans going to do? And this is what you put up? I don't know. I see your notice shirt. I keep looking at it. Maybe that would have been more of a statement at this point in time. Because I will say, I know I'm on a bit of a rant, but Chase Oliver would do well in Australia because we don't have the left in Australia hate libertarians, even though we're pro bodily autonomy, drug use, have sex with whoever you want. We don't care about the gay stuff. We haven't bridged that divide with the left in Australia. But here there seems to be a few more left libertarians who understand that. Chase would do well in Australia just for that point alone, to say we're not bigots, we're not homophobes, we don't care what you do with your bodies, we're against war like you are. Here he is. I would love to have Chase come to Australia because I could sell him there. But in America at this election, I don't know if that's the right decision at this point in time. Not trying to tell you what to do, it's your party, but I'm not too sure if it's the right way forward.
I spoke about this on last week's show. Chase Oliver is a really good dude. I've actually met him in person.
I interviewed him at the convention. I thought he was, you know, principled and spot on, a great spokesperson.
He's a great speaker. He was by far the best speaker out of all our presidential candidates. It wasn't even close, honestly. He was by far the best speaker, which I would hope that's why he got elected. I'm not too sure about that, but I would hope that's why he got elected. But there's one line I draw and why I can't give him my endorsement or vote, and that's with transing children. You're not going to sell me on that. You're not. I'm a Christian man. I love the Lord Jesus Christ. That's my personal Lord and Savior. And my morals, not only is it just my morals, but it's just being a human in general, saying that children cannot consent to taking, you know, medications that's going to stop them from growing, or, you know, saying that it's okay that they can be whatever they want. Like when I had Zeal on last week, I asked him, how many times did you change your mind from the time you were 10 till you're 25? And then again, till the time you were 18 till you're 25, you change your mind a million times between there. If I were the guy that was 10 years old that wanted to be a baseball player when I grew up or something like that, you know, I would think I would be a baseball player, but we know that the odds of that happening are not good, you know. But you can't, like, children, they're innocent, they're I don't even know how to explain it. I didn't bring children into this world for a very good reason. I just didn't do that. And I'm not doing it. I'm in my mid-40s now. It's not happening. But like, they need to just worry about learning when they're little. Like, they need to worry about, like, reading, writing, arithmetic, all that stuff is important, right? Like, you need to learn all those things when you're a kid. It doesn't matter if Sally has a dick or not. It doesn't matter if Travis wants to be a girl. It doesn't matter. That's not something they should even be worried about. They're going to see enough of that shit on TV and out in the real world where they can ask their parents, yo, what's this all about? And then the parents can do what they see fit at that point. That's their right. But you cannot abuse children through transing them. Like, you don't get to make a choice for those kids, whether you're a parent or a state or anything like that. You don't get to make that choice for them because they can't make the choice for themselves. And if that's going to be how they want to do it, as much as I'm against conscription, hey, the state can come take your kids to war whenever they want. Then forget driving laws. They can start driving whenever they see fit. Oh, and by the way, cigarettes and booze and all that, forget it. Whatever they want, let's have a free for all. I'll be living in the forest by then, away from all that, and I won't care. Knock yourselves out. But we're going to see real quick how the world's going to turn out when you just let the kids make decisions for themselves that they have no idea what they're making decisions for, other than it's cool at the time.
Well, you make a good point about where do they get the ideas from to begin with. And it comes from the schools, right? Like it's the same in Australia. We have public education, and even the private schools get subsidies from the government. So it's private public education. But it's all about the curriculum and what are these teachers teaching the kids. In Victoria, one of the states in Australia, the parents are not allowed to question. If their kid comes home and says, I want to be a girl now, dad, even though they're a boy, gender affirmation, you're not allowed to argue with them. And the teacher is allowed to direct them to a doctor and a psych to start that process without the parents' knowledge. That is in the laws in Victoria at the
They're
moment.
doing that in Michigan. These children can talk to their teachers about transing themselves without parental consent. Absolutely not. Like there's no,
Mhm.
no. That is insane to me.
Mhm.
These kids don't just get to pick and choose what they want to be in order to keep up with the Joneses per se, or keep up with the fad. Absolutely not. This is not okay. You know, I don't know if you believe in the Almighty God or not. I'm a firm believer in the Almighty God.
Well, I'm Irish Italian. I don't have a choice. I'm Roman Catholic.
Exactly. But like, you're not going to mess with nature then. You're not going to do that. Like it's against everything that I believe in. And not to mention like, oh my God. Could you imagine? Do you have kids?
No,
You don't have kids.
no.
Could you imagine if you did have a kid and then said child came home from school one day and told you that their teacher said it was okay that they could be whatever they wanted to be, whether they wanted to be a boy or a girl or whatever it may be, like the conversation itself. What are you going to do at that point? Like, what is that?
That's given me goosebumps. Well, I would homeschool my kids. I would want my kids to learn the world how I see it and how I've been raised in a Catholic family. So with the moral compass. And that's one thing I'll say for Chase is he argues about this stuff on a parental rights issue. So as long as the parents are the one guiding the child, and I believe that people are inherently good. I don't think there are parents out there who deliberately want to corrupt their children because of the newest thing. I think if you put the responsibility onto responsible parents and they wanted to go down that path, which is what Chase is arguing, right? It doesn't want the state involved. He wants it to be a family decision. I respect that. But as a God-fearing woman, I wouldn't want to guide my children down that path. But who am I to tell a family on how to raise their kids, right? If you can find a doctor that in his conscious thinks that that's okay to do that kind of thing, and it's the parents and children, and it's just in that situation without the involvement of teachers or the state or anything like that, and that's what they want to do, well, who am I to tell someone else how to live their life? But I, on the other hand, would not want to do that to my children. In Australia, you're a child until you turn 18, and then you can have conversations about that kind of thing. So we would protect the child until they're 18 and not touch them.
And that's how I feel like that. And it's the same thing here. The consent laws, everything's 18, right? And that's fine. Like, yo, if you want to cut off your dick and become a chick, when you're 18, hey, cool, dude. I might even support you. That's fine. But like, you can't consent to that before that. Neither, and the parents shouldn't be consenting to that either. It's abuse. And
Yeah.
the libertarian standpoint, libertarians believe that parents can raise their families as they see fit, but they're also against every form of abuse.
Yeah.
So at one point, is it child abuse? Because I think it is child abuse to let your child do something like that. I think that they're not capable of making up their minds because their minds aren't fully developed yet. Like I said, how many times did you change your mind from the time you were 10 to 25, 18 to 25? Lots. You can't even count them. You
And
can't even count them.
I think we're dancing around the elephant in the room, which is in relation to the mental health side of things. Like, is this a problem that needs treatment from a psychiatric or psychological point of view? Are we just embellishing the children's thought, or do they actually need proper help? That seems to be something no one is talking about. Is gender dysmorphia, is that a mental health issue, or is that something that we should almost celebrate? I'm not sure that we've got the balance right, which is why we're seeing society fall more towards the other way than probably what we'd be comfortable with.
But it's like, so for instance, look at cannabis. Cannabis grows from the earth, right? It's something that God gave us. The Almighty gave us that. For whatever reason, he put it here. I could think of a million reasons why he did it, but he did. And then the state comes in and says, we are higher than the Almighty. That plant that grows out of the ground that God put here is illegal. You can't have that plant. There's a state saying they are higher than the Almighty. Same thing goes for kids and transing them. The Almighty says, hey, there's only two genders. You're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. You know, you make babies, you have families as long as you can, you know, like I didn't do that, you know, and that was no fault of my own or anything like that. It just wasn't in a deck of cards. But then you're turning around and giving teachers in the state the authority to say, hey, we're above the Almighty in what he says in the written book, that, you know, these kids can do whatever they want, and as long as the parents are okay with it. It's not okay. There's nothing okay, especially, you know, here in the States, this country was founded on Christian values. It was. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know, people can argue it all day. That's fine. Argue all you want. It's a fact that this country was founded on Christian values. Not that we need to be shoving it down everybody's throat. Like, I'm against that too, because the Bible, you know, believes in free will. It talks about in free will a lot. People have the free will to do what they choose, and they'll be, you know, met indefinitely at the time when it comes, right? I don't know what else to say. The state is not higher than the Almighty. The state cannot grant you rights. The state cannot tell you what to do with your children. The state cannot tell you what you can and cannot take into your own body as you ingest it. That's why I have a problem with possession laws, especially when it comes to like drugs and guns and stuff like that, because possession, who cares if you possess something? Possession is nothing. So what? I got a bag of weed on me, whatever, boom. What am I doing with that bag of weed? Am I smoking it and driving? Am I endangering people, or is it just a bag of weed in my pocket? Same thing with the gun. Is it just a gun in my pocket? Did I commit a crime with that? Was I doing anything wrong with it, or was it just a gun in my pocket?
Well, in Australia, you can't carry a gun around in your pocket. You would be in a whole lot of trouble, regardless of your intent. You have to have it locked away in a proper storage container in the back of your car. You can only be driving it to or from the range with everything separate. Otherwise, you'll get in a lot of trouble.
Australia's an abomination. That might be, they're worse than New York.
Yes. Yes.
They're worse than New York, which you happen to be in right now. What are you doing in New York?
I'm making my way across to New Hampshire for Pork Fest. So I've driven up from Texas through Nashville. Now I'm in New York, getting to Pork Fest tomorrow night. I'm giving a speech about gun laws, actually.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Whose tent are you in?
I don't know what tent I'm in yet. I'm just going to rock up and they'll tell me where to go and I'll be there. But I'm so excited. I get to see everyone from the convention in DC, all my libertarian mates, get to see them all again. It's very exciting. I'm excited to go to New Hampshire because of their free state movement. I think it's a fantastic idea. I wish we had some kind of state in Australia we could even consider having a free state project, because there's none at all.
New Hampshire's cool because they even have the Democrats on board.
Yes.
Which is wild. Like, Democrats are not on board with liberty usually anywhere in the United States, period. You know, and Republicans are wishy-washy on it, but Democrats themselves are not for the liberty movement whatsoever. So the fact that they have Democrats in their state that are like down for the cause, which we call here in the States blue dog Democrats.
Okay, I
They're
like
the,
it.
they're the old school, like Kennedy, JFK. If JFK was still around today and running for president, he would probably run as a Republican at this point.
Mm,
Honestly,
mm.
can't say the same about his little cousin or whoever it is, RFK,
Well, what do you think about him? Because he was at the convention, RFK Jr., and he threw his hat in the ring for the presidential nomination and got knocked out in the first round. His speech was pretty good. He read through the first 10 amendments and gave his opinion of them. I noticed when it came to the Second Amendment, he was very brief and didn't really say much about it. So can't be sold.
RFK is a gun grabbing climate freak who
Mm.
rides Israel's pole. That's exactly what RFK is. The fact that, so I was, as much as a libertarian anarchist, whatever you want to call me, I was very much against all those guys being at the Libertarian Convention. I did not like Trump being there. I did not like RFK or Vivek being there. I felt like it took away from our presidential candidates, who I absolutely loved, by the way. I had them all on my show. All of our presidential candidates have been on my show probably multiple times. I thought it was a slap in the face to those guys who were beating the pavement and doing the thing and getting ballot access for libertarians and all that. It was a slap in the face to them. And I spoke out about it a bunch because I thought for real that the convention itself was going to turn into a giant MAGA rally, which it did not.
No.
And so I publicly apologized to Angela McArdle and LP National for being, so vocal against what they were doing, because it didn't turn into that. I still think it was a slap in the face to our candidates, but it wasn't the MAGA rally I expected. So,
Well, I was in the room when Trump spoke. I was in the media lockup from 5 o'clock and he came on at 9:15. There were a lot of MAGA people in the crowd and a lot of division and booze and jostling. But it made the news in Australia that Trump spoke at that convention. So Libertarian Party National Convention was on the news in Australia, and they don't even cover our convention. So it was good in that terms. And when he said he would promise to free Ross Ulbricht in front of that crowd of libertarians, I mean, that went down really well. I wish he would have promised to free Assange as well. We want him back home in Australia.
he's the one who had Assange indicted.
That's right. And he had on his desk in his last presidential term the papers to free him, and he didn't. So I'm very disappointed in Trump. We just want him home. I've met his dad, Julian's dad, a few times in Australia. Oh. He just wants him to come home. That's all we want. But Trump didn't mention him. He just said he would free Ross. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. If he gets the nomination, he might be a Orange Luther King, Martin Luther King in jail.
Well, Trump not only promised to free Assange, but he said he would give libertarians a cabinet position. Mm-hmm. And so I don't believe it. I don't believe he's going to do that at all. The guy who had the FBI raid his house in Florida wants to give the same FBI a new building. It's hard to take the guy seriously. I can't do it. And I voted for Trump in 2016.
Oh, wow.
I did. I did not like our libertarian candidate. I was a libertarian for 2008, 2012, 2016 came. Gary Johnson was a huge turnoff, especially towards the end. He said some really dumb shit, actually. And I was like, well, got to vote for Trump because I'm definitely not voting for Hillary. I'm a never Democrat. I've never voted Democrat my entire life. It's not happening. I'm a Southern Baptist boy. We didn't do that, but then 2020 came and I was like, nope, not doing it again. And Jo Jorgensen, which I happen to have her signs right here. I had her signs in my yard and shit. She was a disappointment. She was a very big disappointment. And I feel like that's where we're headed with Chase Oliver as another George Jorgensen.
Well, Spike Cohen's an absolute bloody legend. He came to
Yeah.
Australia. Yeah, he came to Australia last year. I met him and his beautiful wife, Tash, and said to him, "You should have thrown your hat in the ring, mate." And he said, "Not this time," because he's doing all this amazing work with You Are
Yes.
the So it's, and Dave Smith as well. I had a chat to him and I said, "Why didn't you throw your hat in the ring? You kind of promised to and you didn't." So I know he's feeling a bit guilty. But what about this time? Are you going to vote Trump or are you going to vote Libertarian? Have you thought about it yet?
Oh, I'm literally NODA.
No,
I'm
yeah.
literally NODA. I'll write in Ron Paul one last time.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna write in Ron Paul one last time. And I'm probably not gonna vote for anything in the federal, like I'll write in whoever, I'll write in my dogs, myself, my wife, whoever, for anything that's federal. Um, I'm going to vote for our state and local stuff because that's what's important to me right now. But here in the United States, it doesn't matter who you vote for president or anybody else who's part of the federal government. We're not changing that. It's not happening. It's not gonna happen. You're not gonna fix the federal government. In the United States, they keep getting larger and more power. That's all they do. You're not fixing it. You're not voting your way out of this. It's not happening. It's very unfortunate. And that's why I'm like, well, we can get at a local standpoint, get the right people elected locally for sheriff, school board, mayor, city council, city clerk, whatever it may be, that's local. And just start the nullification process and open up alternative, economies and competitive currencies and be like, hey, businesses in my town can use gold, silver, Monero, Bitcoin, whatever it feels like using as currency. That's how you win. This is how you win, is from the ground up. You're not going to get it from way up here. Libertarians are not going to be president. Libertarians are not going to be senators. Libertarians are not going to be congressmen. But libertarians can be your mayor, your sheriff, your local city, whatever it may be. Libertarians can also be your state representatives, your governors, stuff like that. And that's where you start to win. And then from there, people from the outside will be like, well, you're from what, Perth?
Yes.
So you're from Perth. I did a little homework on you. So you're elected mayor, you have chosen, you have elected libertarian sheriffs and whatnot in your town. And you can tell the Australian government, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to comply. There's nothing you can do about it. At least that's how it is in the States here. We can take Detroit City and be like, no, we're not going to comply to your gun laws. We're not going to comply to your abortion laws. We're not going to comply to, your censorship. We're not going to comply to your surveillance. And that's how you start to win, is from the bottom up. And then people from the outside would be like, well, check out this chick in Perth and look what she's doing. Why are they able to do this, this, and this, and we can't? Maybe we should start listening. And then that's when you can start running your Congress people, your Senate people, and your presidents.
Yes.
It's a decentralized revolution. It is something that you can do locally to protect your local people. You guys had a hard time in Australia with the COVID nonsense. We had a hard time here in Michigan with the COVID nonsense. Like, there was a point where you couldn't even buy seeds to grow your own food here. They shut it down.
Well, they shut the gun shops. That was the first thing they closed in Australia. All the gun shops closed. So the farmers couldn't buy ammunition. They couldn't even continue doing what they do because the Australian government, that's the very first thing they did, was close all the gun shops. That tells you where their intentions lie. They were worried about the very few of us who had guns because they knew they were going to roll out this controlling agenda where they locked us up, shut down our businesses, couldn't go outside, couldn't travel to see our families. The very first thing they did was close the gun shop. Isn't that despicable?
Wow. They
Yeah.
didn't close the gun shops here, but this is what they did here in Michigan. And I'll never forget it because it was a good friend of mine who happens to be quite liberal, actually. But he's like, man, I need to go get myself a handgun. So he went to go buy himself a 9mm. They shut down the background checks. He couldn't get his gun that day. They shut down the background checks. This was during the height of the COVID tyranny. And I know you're listening, motherfuckers. So I know I'm talking about you. Dudes, they shut down the background checks so they couldn't sell guns to people for a little bit. And this only went on for a couple days, but like it happened. And it happened to be when my liberal buddy was going to the gun store trying to get himself a Glock. You know what I mean? Like, wow. You know?
The
But
other thing they did to us, you had to show proof of vaccination to buy alcohol. You couldn't even go through a drive-through bottle-o and buy a booze without showing proof of vaccination. And in Western Australia, you needed 3 injections to be considered vaccinated. You could not buy alcohol without 3 injections. That's how bad it got. Yeah.
they didn't do that here because the alcohol was the only thing that was really bringing in tax revenue. Alcohol, you could buy your weed and you could buy booze during COVID, even in Michigan where it was like super tyrannical. And then the funny thing was is they closed down the restaurants but kept the casinos open
Of course.
because where's the biggest germ infestation ever? The casino with all the dirty money. You know, think about all the money you ever counted. How many strippers' asses and tits have those been in? You know, like, wow, this was happening here. But the one thing I will say about what happened here in Michigan was the worst part was the compliance. Like I said before, like people just complied. And that's when I knew, you know, what was really going on. Not to mention I had plenty of people in the medical industry in my life where the local hospital, which, you know, they said the local hospital, which is 5 minutes down the road, that's who actually gave me my surgery last year. The local hospital had 260 beds designated for COVID. And they never had more than 200 full at a time. And then I went and did a job when I wasn't supposed to be working for somebody whose sister happened to be a COVID nurse in my local area, which, by the way, my local area was supposed to be a cesspool for COVID. That's what they were telling us on the TV. Oh, you know, Detroit, you know, Oak Park, Southfield there, this is the biggest, you know, COVID outbreak, blah, blah, blah. My friend's sister got laid off during all that, and she was a COVID nurse. And that's when I was like, scratching my head going, yeah, something's not right here. Something isn't adding up. And then I just started digging and going down rabbit holes and going down rabbit holes and going down rabbit holes. And I'm going, wow, this is the ultimate power grab. This might be bigger than the Federal Reserve in 1913 when it comes to power grabs, because they had everyone. Like I was the minority, the people who were out, you know, saying, no, this is fucked up. We were the minority. The majority was going, whatever you need us to do, we'll do it. Whatever you want. We'll close down our businesses. We'll do whatever you tell us. You know, we'll close down our schools, our churches. You know, we won't let people grow their own food. But hey, it's cool if the casino stays open. That's fine.
The same in Australia. They all just complied. You can't comply your way out of tyranny, and that's where we are now. It's going to be hard to swing the pendulum back to liberty when I feel like it's too late for my country. But it's not too late for you because you have your constitution, you have your God-given inalienable rights. We don't have that to fall back on. That's why our gun laws are such a disgrace, because we have nothing to stand up and say, we have this piece of paper that says we can own whatever we want. You can't take it.
Well, that's the thing. The Constitution of the United States is just as good as toilet paper anymore. It really is. It's worth nothing. It's a useless piece of parchment paper. They trample on it, they stomp on it, they wipe their ass with it all they want.
Only if you let them. Only if you let them.
Thank you. But the people are letting them. That's the thing, is like people are just letting it go. You know, we had a couple instances like some asshats will be like, well, you guys tried J6 and look what happened to you. No, January 6th was a Fed instigated riot where some retards followed suit and did some dumb shit. That wasn't a uprising. That wasn't anything. The feds did that. You know, that wasn't anything. And we had a situation here in Michigan during all the COVID tyranny where a bunch of people with rifles actually got into the state capitol and was shouting and stuff like that. That's all it was. And I almost wonder if that was just for TV media, you know, because if you were really feeling that oppressed and you got into a state building with guns, I would think you would probably use them. Right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't need the feds pounding my door down. You know what I'm saying? But like these people got into a state building with guns and got into a shouting match with police. Like if those people really wanted to do something, they could have done something. And same thing with the J6ers. They didn't. So what else are you supposed to think other than it was feds who instigated the thing where a bunch of retards followed suit because they thought they were doing the right thing? It's no different. It's no different, you know. But that's where we're at as a world. That's where we're at as a nation, as people have become too comfortable. They've become too complacent and they're scared. They're literally scared of what could happen to them. You know, you got, you know, for instance, after J6 happened, the president of the United States, Joe Biden, got out there and said, well, you're going to need some like F-15s and stuff if you think you're going to defeat the government. Well, guess what, you guys? Talk to Afghanistan and talk to Vietnam. Because the United States did not win those wars. As a matter of fact, they were made to look stupid after that. And they did that through guerrilla warfare. Thank you very much.
Well, the tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of tyrants from time to time. So I'm just saying, that's what you guys did back in the day. We need some leadership in Australia. So whatever America does, we're not far behind. We just need the inspiration. You're the world leaders after all. You're the world empire. Show us the way to freedom.
What now? I like how you say that and I dig it, but how can Australia liberate themselves? Like, how can the people of Australia liberate themselves? Like, what do you think?
The whole system of government needs to change. So we have a parliamentary system. We're still part of the monarchy. We need to become a republic. So we need to free ourselves from the shackles of the British like you did. And I'm not saying that we need to do it violently. I'm just saying we need to redo the whole system so it's in favor of the people having the power, not the government. And to do that, we need Australia to become a republic. Now, there's a big movement against leaving the monarchy. After Queen Elizabeth II died, there was a bit more of a swing towards now's the time for Australia to stand on its own 2 feet. I'm hopeful in my lifetime we'll become a republic, but I don't trust the people writing our constitution at the moment, given what they've done to us so far. So we need real leaders to stand up. We need libertarians. and there's not enough of us at the moment. So I'm doing everything I can to educate Australians about liberty. That's why I'm over here in your country shooting my first belt-fed gun the other day. I was very excited. We can't have them in Australia. I'm just trying to lead by example and live my life as free as possible and not be afraid of anything. If I'm not hurting anyone else, I'm no threat to anyone. And I just want people to live free or die, as we say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we go, how can people find you? I know you do a show, Libby. You're allowed to talk about your show on here. It's all good.
Yeah, I should get you on. So I do a show called Shooting the Breeze with Lady Liberty. And you've got to come on. I want to have a chat to you and role reverse so I can ask you some questions. Lady Liberty Australia, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, of course. So, and if you want to support my work, I've got to buy me a coffee, beer, ammo link up there. If you want to fling me some dollary dues, I would appreciate it. If not, please just talk to me. I love having conversations like this. I love Americans. I love your passion for liberty, and I'm just trying to learn as much as I can. So one day I can liberate my great country, because I am proud to be Australian. I just hate the people running it.
I feel that. I feel that big time, because I love the United States of America. I love my country. I hate my government. And it's one of those things where it's God bless America, God damn the government. I believe that in my whole heart, you know, like God bless Australia, God damn their government, you know.
Amen.
Minus the snakes. You guys need to get rid of all those snakes you got over there. I'll tell you what.
Snakes, spiders, sharks, crocodiles, they're all out to get us. We can't even defend ourselves with guns. That's what I mean, nation of victims.
But thank you so much for your time, Kate. I'm glad we finally got to do this. And until next time, you guys, peace, love, and liberty, y'all. Be good.